Welcome to Map My Route, an audio storytelling project. In each episode, our guests will map their personal histories of place and share the lessons they've learned along the way. My name is Nicole Wright. There is a bravery and also a privilege in feeling comfortable to map your route in a public way. Often we don't make decisions of place in a vacuum. There are partners and family members and coworkers and friends that are by necessity included in these choices. There are vulnerabilities and values that are sometimes too young and unsettled to confidently share in a permanent documentation. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all those who are participating in this project, either as a contributor or as a listener, for holding the discomfort and mystery of personal histories of place. I hope I can remind you that your process, your feelings, your musings are valid and as important in your journey as your final destination, and that your final destination is really just the next place you decide to stop and rest. There is always another train on its way if you choose to take it. I met today's guest on the other side of the world at the curious age of 20 years old. I was a fish out of water in many ways in our study abroad program, both being a young person on my first trip abroad and being one of the more straight-edge students in our group. Paige lived down the hall in our dorm and was often seen reading books such as Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. She has always been inspiring to me from the perspective of her interest in philosophy and theory, but what attracted me to her was how visibly she expressed both the pleasure and pains of traveling. From those days as students, she has always been someone to laugh through the solid and the shitty. I also can't help but laugh when life presents its promised challenges, and I hope this episode helps you too, dear listener, to see the comedy in the journey. Today is September 8th. It's a Monday. I'm in Washington, Maine with my friend Paige, who I have known since 2014, spring 2014. We met studying abroad in Thailand, and you've just been making me laugh ever since. 11 years going now. You visited me in the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan you did a cross-country road trip, and I think this is my fourth visit to Maine. I've come to see you twice, went to Portland a separate time. Today I'm just here for 24 hours, but we're making the most of it. We just had a lobster dinner. But Paige, I'm going to let you introduce yourself if there's anything you want to say about who you are, what you're up to right now.
Yeah, I am grateful to have someone like Nicole in my life, and who is taking the time to chat and to visit and to just be the person that she is.
No, but you have to talk about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole other story. What about me? I grew up in Maine, Mid-Coast Maine. I moved back. I've been diddling around the last few years, but wanted to come back to be close to family, namely my mom. I'm living here now on her property in what is called the studio, the stew. Right now it's an 8x10 Amish built shed that has been retrofitted by myself and my mom and her companion, Dennis. So yeah, I've been living in it for the last few months, working at a restaurant after what has been an interesting time in American politics and foreign policy. Should I talk about that? Yeah. So I spent 3 years in D.C. and also abroad in Madagascar through the Peace Corps, studying and learning about international development, mostly in education and gender context, how to improve programming and access and inclusion for U.S. programming in aid. But yeah, I was recently working in monitoring, evaluation, and learning for a USAID contractor and was laid off as USAID as a department agency, government agency was dismantled completely during the current administration. So was laid off alongside most everyone else in the industry that I just, got a master's degree in. So yeah, things are a little topsy-turvy for me in general in my life right now. So really trying to lay some groundwork to establish some more security in terms of home and the people that I'm around and the people that are, there to support me when the house of cards that I had been building up inevitably came tumbling down in a very
Don't make plans.
Don't try ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are in similar situations right now, just chilling with our moms, trying not to,
maintain insanity.
Yeah.
On everybody's part.
So, what do you remember about growing up in Maine, and what mentality did you have about moving, living somewhere as an adult? Did you always know that you wanted to move away and come back?
Yeah, I think for the most part, my memories of growing up in Maine were very visceral, like very sensation-based, very sensory. A couple things that I think of are the taste of ocean water, swimming in Mossman Park in Searsport, and the feeling of rocks underneath my feet barefoot as I was swimming in the cold, cold ocean, and the smell of the seaweed, and the feeling of the warm sun and the cool ocean, and running through. In my backyard, we had a giant willow tree that had the longest dangling tendrils of branches that underneath would obscure the outside world, so you felt like you were in this little oasis inside within the willow tree, and just running through that in the summertime, or running through sprinklers and things like that. So everything was very outdoors based, which really created this sense of appreciation for clean air, clean water, clean soil, growing things. I always had gardens growing up. My mom has always had the greenest thumb of anyone I've ever met. So whether it was growing food or flowers, there was always this cultivation, value of cultivation around me in terms of my relationship to the natural world, and harmony and appreciation for the natural world. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to kind of branch out and explore beyond Maine, because it can feel very sheltered at times in its own little bubble. And I think I realized that pretty quickly as I was approaching high school and college. I wanted to go to a college that had a larger, more diverse student population. And so I ended up going to UMaine, Orono, which for me at the time was a big deal, because I had only ever grown up in small towns. So from there, studying abroad was an opportunity for me to, take that a step further. And of course that, set the course for eventually traveling more, doing a cross-country trip, spending some time in the Virgin Islands, and then eventually doing the Peace Corps, and then living in DC for the last couple years. And who knows what's next, but I think one thing leads to another in terms of wanting to explore places and spaces, and externally and therefore internally. As you kind of move through those different geographical locations, you kind of move through different locations internally, but at the same time, everywhere you go, there you are. I think that's one thing I've learned.
Is that a Buddhist thing?
I think that's a Dr. Seuss thing. Or the places you'll go. Yeah. I think you're right. No, I think that's sort of a principle in mindfulness, and realizing that there's certain aspects of yourself that are unavoidable for good reason. I like to think of inner and outer space in terms of how I relate to home, finding and building a home within yourself, and then also learning how to build a shelter physically, so that your physical body, is taken care of, but there's also your spiritual body and your energetic, emotional body that also needs to be tended to and taken care of. It's kind of how I try to think about those types of things.
Do you remember having any sort of picture of what your life would look like in your late 20s, 30s, when you're in high school? Because you went to school for women's studies?
Yeah, I studied sociology, but I focused on gender.
Yeah.
Race, class, and gender.
Were you just freeballing?
Pretty much. I'm the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree, so there was not really
that alone.
Yeah, I mean, figuring out my academic life was pretty much just, yep, okay, let's figure, I'm gonna study something I'm actually interested in and figure out the career stuff later, which, stay tuned, how that works out. Still figuring that out 10 years later, but no, I don't necessarily regret that. I think it's more just, I think it helped me to frame the way that I express myself in a more authentic and perhaps informed way. I think it helped me scaffold sort of building blocks in ways to like relate to the world, and especially traveling and like learning about different cultures and different schools of thought in a way that is a little less judgmental and a little bit more observation based.
I was definitely the judgy one in our study abroad group because I was the STEM major. That's how I perceived myself, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think that perspective on your major and career bleeds into your beliefs about where you should live or what you should be doing, like, or do you feel like they're very different?
I think they definitely relate to one another. I think a big reason why I'm super interested in at least independence for women to have their own means of shelter, home, land ownership, inheritance, all of that plays into my current situation and what I hope every woman can have access to, because that is not, I mean, I was talking about this to you earlier, but like that is not a standard by any means throughout the world, where women legally can own their own land, have their own material resources under their own control. And I think that is a huge play into power structures that exist around the world where it is unequal in terms of women being subjugated to the whims of male relatives, husbands, you know, whoever else, where that is not always in their best interest and in anyone's best interest. So yeah, I think that's a huge reason why what is happening now is super important to me in terms of my mom having access to the land that she has access to and building what she's been able to build and doing it, you know, with the help of close friends and, you know, being able to really have ownership over the entire process, you know, start to now. It's not finished. I don't know that it ever will be. I think it will always be this emergent sort of process. And that's also the beauty of it, is that because it will be eventually transferred to her children, like it extends beyond herself. So it's a way that she's making something available. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's something that I'm extremely grateful for, and I want to be part of the process, part of that emergent process now. Yeah, learning about this particular parcel of land. What are the quirks? What's the things I need to know about the winter, and what is it like in the spring, and how much water do we get over year, and like all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess to kind of circle back to why having an understanding of power structures as they relate to gender systematically, how that shows up in my own life is like really important in terms of the choices I'm now making as it relates to this particular land, my particular home for the time being. It all comes down to like when we define freedom and autonomy, like what does that actually mean? And for me at this point, it's a little bit like, yes, I'm living at home and I'm also, you know, making an investment in my future as well.
What have you noticed being here that you really like and want to take into the next version of you? And what have you found that does really not fit you, whether it's physical items, surroundings, or maybe your mental relationship to certain dynamics?
I need a lot less than I thought I did. I think I'm a very sentimental person, you know, looking around now. Like I have a lot of things like art, and it's very important to me. And I don't know that will ever necessarily change, and I don't want it to change. I think it's more about like how to incorporate necessity, like form and function. Those are two things that have always been, that's the piece I'm trying to harmonize of what functions do I need and what form do I want, and how I can merge those things in a harmonious way. So I've been trying to do a lot of research about tiny homes and ADUs, or accessory dwelling unit, to figure out where I can harmonize those aspects for me at this point. It's very early days because I still am trying to figure out what the time frame will look like for me, and whether the building will happen now in the next 5 years or the next 10 years, or what it's a little bit unclear what the time frame is going to look like for that. So for now, I'm very much in the sort of research and design phase. But yeah, I'm definitely picking up elements of learning how like a more minimalist lifestyle might provide a bit more clarity mentally, decluttering, which I definitely could benefit from, but also maintaining some level of visual, physical representation of things that I enjoy, like art and cards and sentimentality that I think is a huge part of who I am that I don't want to lose sight of. Balancing those things is important to me at this point. So I don't know if that's like things I'm trying to figure out and things I kind of just want to leave the same. I'm not in a stage where I'm really building anything yet, so it's still very theoretical at this stage.
So you've left and returned to Maine several times now, and you have this inheritance to expect one day. What's your existing relationship to Maine like, and is it the long game for you? How do you know if it's the long game?
I think Maine, every time I come back, I appreciate it a little bit more. There's still a few things that I want to accomplish that would likely take me out of Maine. Whether that's on a longer term basis or a shorter term basis remains to be seen. Things like language acquisition or like developing fluency in another language, for example. That's definitely a goal that's still like in the back of my mind, and that would be really difficult to kind of do here based on my experience with language acquisition in the past. It's like really the best way to just like go somewhere where that language is spoken like constantly. But every time, like I say, every time that I come back, I do appreciate it a little bit more. And the person that I feel like I'm a little bit different every time I come back, and I appreciate and see things a little differently. Where once I saw sleepy hometown with nothing going on and I, just really needed to get out of here, I now see that same hometown as just this like beautiful, tranquil place that I can like relax. It's always based on the experience that I had in the interim, but I always feel like this is my home. Like I'll always come back here. There's a sense of tranquility that I have and peace that I have here that like I haven't found anywhere else. Especially, with my mom being here, like she's not going anywhere. That may or may not change what my plans are. So,
Do you see it as your home base that you'll come and go from as you need to?
I think so. I think one thing I need to figure out though, in order for that to be sustainable, is I need to figure out winters here in like a real way that it doesn't involve like just rewatching Game of Thrones. Like I need to figure out ways that are healthy for me to like kind of cope with limited sunlight and cold temperatures and things closing early, that kind of stuff. Maybe some more physical activity surrounding, winter. Still working that out, but
As far as history and culture of Maine for people who have not been here before, what draws you to Maine beyond just that it's where you're from, and what do you wish other people knew about it?
there's definitely this sort of, well, just figure it out type mentality to a lot of people here, where because of the seasonality and the sort of harshness of things, a lot of people don't really beat around the bush when it comes to getting things done or like communication, or there's a very straight shooter aspect to like how people tend to communicate and like the directness of things. And I definitely appreciate that. And I think it's it's like kind of funny at times because I think I tend to be a little bit verbose, and whenever I hear someone really just cut through all the crap and like really just say something in a few words that has such depth and just like it just kind of echoes in your mind, you're like, oh, like that is like the perfect way to just like say that really complex thing, but like say it in a way that's just so straightforward and just cuts through, like I think that's like one.
Is that an East Coast thing?
I mean,
I don't know. Midwest, we got Midwest nice. People are beating around the bush all the time.
it might be. I don't know. Like, I guess for me, I've experienced most of that maybe because I've spent the most time in Maine. So, like, it could be more broadly maybe applied to the East Coast. But I think that's something I do appreciate, is that's kind of how people tend to relate to each other here, of like, just leave out all the extra, just tell me exactly what it is. Let's work on it. Let's figure it out. I don't need all the extra frills and whatever, like just what we need. And that's kind of at least how I experience it. And that's helped me to kind of start to figure out how to cut back. It's like I guess like a value or a philosophy of like just kind of cutting back extra stuff. Doesn't need to be there,
Well, we were saying that inland Maine reminds us both of driving through Michigan, which I love, of course. Feels familiar to me. And then you also have like the coast, rocky Like you were talking about seaweed, salty. But do you like feel warm and fuzzy about those kinds of elements of being here? Or is it like, yep, that's just what it's like?
I said this, I mean, maybe this is a bit morbid, but I'm going to say it anyway. But when I die, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes to be spread on top of a mountain, in a river, and in the ocean. And that has a lot to do with, I think, what you're talking about. The appreciation for all of the things. Like, those are the three big things for me that, like, when you say make me feel warm and fuzzy, because that's like, those are the best memories I've had. And they all relate to, like, the natural beauty that is Maine. And that, you know, obviously, like, there are rivers other places, there's ocean other places, there's mountains other places, but, like, there's something about the ones here that, like, really mean a lot to me in my life, you know, and I want that to continue as a theme throughout my life.
As a Mainer, do you ever, or have you ever felt like Maine is underappreciated or like a hidden jewel? I feel like some of the ways that I feel about the like topography of Michigan are like everybody talks shit about this place, but I love it. Or they don't know what they're talking about kind of thing. Do you feel or relate to that at all?
I think there's something really rugged, like, about Maine. I think there's a ruggedness, of course, to the landscape. There's a ruggedness to the people, and I think that they kind of coexist and they inform one another. There's a ruggedness, like, to the seasons as well, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but, like,
But I think the LL Bean boot just kind of reflects that too.
yeah,
Like we need utility.
yeah.
We need warmth.
Keep safe, keep warm, enjoy yourself, to be out and enjoy all this ruggedness. Like,
Uh-huh.
protect yourself from the ruggedness, but also get out there and enjoy it. This doesn't exist everywhere.
Yeah.
This pristine wilderness is something really to be valued, and a lot of people here really value that because they appreciate the fact that it's like, you know, there's a deep sense of conservation here where the natural world is, like, definitely appreciated more so than anywhere else I've ever been or seen. But, like, even the symbolism of, like, different birds, and people come here from all around to, like, explore and to, like, really get out there and get out into the wilderness, because there is a magic to it. If you go and get lost, almost, you can, I mean, this sounds so cheesy, but, like, you find something in yourself when you're, like, way out, you know, like, really far out. Like, there's something that you can't find anywhere else other than being, like, really, really far out into the wilderness, at least that I've experienced. I know that sounds so corny, but, like, I think it's true. I feel like a lot of people would probably agree with me, but, like, yeah.
Do you think there's anything that you really struggle with when you're in Maine or when you think about being in Maine for a long time?
Definitely some issues here in terms of bigotry, racism, as there is anywhere. We're in America, you know, like, that is part of American history, but it is very much, it's very much here as well, especially in more rural parts. So as you get further away from the coast, that's not to say that I don't want to make broad generalizations about people in different parts of Maine, but, like, generally speaking, at least in terms of voting districts and things like that, like, patterns over time, like, you can, you know, statistically look up that information, but, like, Maine is tends to be a purple state, something that a lot of places deal with, but Maine is not unique in that sense. And especially, you know, nowadays where a lot of things are being brought to the forefront politically, and how there are a lot of communities that are realizing how awesome Maine is, and, you know, wanting to live here and wanting to, you know, participate in, you know, the outdoors and, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's really important for people to embody principles of inclusion and understanding, like, you know, different cultural values, and trying to understand that diversity is a strength, and it will make Maine an even better place to live than it already is. I know that there's definitely probably some folks here that wouldn't agree with that, so that can be tough. something that has come up, at least in the last year or so that I've been here, is housing prices and housing availability, especially along the mid-coast, as it relates to post-COVID migration of people and people working remotely and things like that. It's become a real issue. Maine has always had an economy that heavily relies on tourism, so anything in terms of fluctuating seasonality has always been, something that I think business owners and policymakers have always tried to kind of pay close attention to, trying to figure out how to regulate.
When you look at like the rest of your life, how do you think you will decide when to take on a new place? Is it, I just realized right now that I have the means to do this thing that I've always wanted to do, so I'm going to do it right now? Is it, I think family plays a factor into it. What do you expect will guide you when deciding?
Because Maine is somewhere that I personally have deep ties into in terms of my childhood and growing up here, like, we'll always come back here. But in terms of like whether it's time for me to leave, I think that's always been a very like intuitive thing for me. And it kind of stems, I think, around the people in my life at the time, whether that's like a significant other or whether that's a job. Like, I think those are the main reasons a lot of people either stay or go. It has to do with the relationships in the community that they either have or have not built in that particular phase.
Like a reaction.
Yeah, I think over time, there's moments where, you can be really satisfied with the place that you're living, but there may be a time where that satisfaction diminishes or something drastic happens, like you lose your job or like something happens in your family. Like, those are sort of the catalyzing moments of like whether you may stay or go somewhere. But otherwise, I think for the most part, like, there's this inertia that kind of happens where like I wouldn't move unless something really is like kind of driving, either intrinsically or extrinsically, like driving me to like kind of do something else. Most recently, like, there's been a lot of changes in my life regarding my work and housing as it relates to within Maine. Having the ability to work remotely allowed me to move back here in the first place, but then losing that employment changed how I was living within the state. But I knew that I wanted to stay here. I just needed to kind of adjust what that living arrangement was going to look like. Feels like almost like playing chess sometimes, where it's like, okay, do I sacrifice this one piece so that I can, make this other move, and then, okay, maybe in the future I can, figure that out later, or like, I don't know, that's kind of how it's been feeling lately. But yeah, for now, I'm kind of like trying not to sacrifice too many pieces so that I can still have some autonomy and kind of control over the board.
I asked this question to my sister, which I think is an interesting question that I like to ask people who are like really, I say I like to ask people, I've done this 3 times, but people who feel really certain about a place is, do you feel so strongly about being here because of circumstances, such as you were born here, or on the opposite end of the scale, like you picked this place on purpose?
I don't think that this feeling is exclusive to Maine. I think a feeling, that's what's so great about being a mobile human being, is that you have the ability to perceive a wide variety of connections to places.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the ability to like travel, I will always advocate for everyone to travel as much as they possibly can, for the reasons that I've personally have benefited from traveling, is, meeting new people, seeing new ways of life, expanding your perspectives on what it is we're all doing here. We're all figuring things out, and like meeting people you never otherwise would have met, or trying food you never would have otherwise tasted. And like, so that feeling is not exclusive to Maine. I think because I have so many memories here, I know where I'm going. I don't have to like navigate,
Mm-hmm.
I know it like the back of my hand kind of stuff, where it's like easy for me to just like move through these spaces, which allows me to kind of focus my attention on other things. Whereas when I'm in a new place, there's so much more processing that goes on mentally that like you don't realize takes a toll, especially if you're somewhere and you're learning a new language at the same time. Like, that is just like mentally So when folks come here from other countries or speaking other languages, like, I appreciate that so much because, like, I have learned a level of empathy for that. And, like, trying to navigate a new system, a new language, new groups of people, like, it's really, really hard. Like, it's really difficult. Being in Maine lessens that difficulty for me because I have spent so many years here and I just have a level of familiarity with it. But I have experienced other types of feelings of, like, homeness because I wasn't born here. Like, I was born in Phoenix, and part of the reason I took that cross-country road trip after undergrad was to kind of go back to where I was born, because this was something that I also asked myself. Like, what does it mean to be born somewhere and then not have any real memories of that place? Because we moved when I was like 4 years old, so I didn't really have any memories. So going back there, I didn't mean anything to me, really. My father was there at the time, and I was living with him for a few months, but, like, I didn't feel anything. All of those feelings were, for me, were in Maine. Like, it didn't matter where I was born necessarily. You know, depending on who you talk to, whether you're born in Maine sometimes can make a difference in terms of whether you're considered a Mainer or not. But, like, I consider myself a Mainer.
Are there any character traits about yourself that you relate to the places you've lived?
Yeah, I think my sense of humor, for sure, comes from, yeah, my mom is from Massachusetts, so there's, like, very deep, like, New England sense of humor, which is pretty dry, I would say. I think that's definitely a piece. I think there's, like, a lot of existentialists, you know, write about the Maine woods, and, like, there's this sort of whimsical, existential, philosophical nature of, like, how people feel when they're in the wilderness, which I've kind of touched on earlier. That's definitely part of my personality. The sort of, like, connection, the, like, transcendental connection that I experience from growing up in nature and, like, in, like, this sort of undeveloped, like, wilderness, that I definitely was a huge part of me growing up, and something I appreciated. And the people around me, my friends and I, like, just grew up being in the woods and, like, appreciating just how beautiful it was. Like, when it rains, it doesn't bother me, you know, like, that kind of stuff of, like, not being worried about getting wet when it rains. Like, it's just raining, you know, like, it's not good or bad, like, it just is. So that sort of just isness is something that I definitely have incorporated into my personality, because, like, what good is it to complain about it? How does that, it's not making not making it any better, you know? It's cold outside. Yeah, it's friggin' cold. Yeah, okay, you know, like, put an extra sweater on. I don't know what to tell you, you know, like, throw another log on the fire. Like, so yeah, I guess there's, like, a kind of practicality, I think, approach that I have.
Back to those boots.
Yeah,
Practical.
yeah.
You're gonna need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna, I mean, go for it without them, but, like, you're probably gonna want them because you're gonna get wet. Like, if you ride this ride, like, you're gonna get wet, you know.
Buy the ticket, take the ride.
Yeah.
Your words and probably many other people's. You love that, right? Yeah.
That's been one of my mantras for a long time. I had a friend the other day ask me about how I was feeling about my life lately, kind of on this similar thread of, like, the choices I've made to, like, you know, move out of my apartment and move back home, because that was a very conscious choice. And I was like, I kind of feel like I'm, like, floating in the tides right now. Like, I'm kind of, like, I'm feeling the waves come in and out, and that they're kind of tossing me around a little bit. But it was my choice to get into the water. Yeah, like, I chose to put my bathing suit on and get in the water. So, like, yeah, I'm floating around a little bit right now, but, like,
it's a little thrilling if you let it.
Yeah, like, I think there's definitely a state of flow that I'm allowing in my life right now, because I think the rigidity and structure that I was craving eventually, I mean, it kind of all crumbled a little bit. So I'm trying to take things as they come for the time being.
It would be interesting to have this conversation again if either of us were ever in, like, a long-term partnership again, because I feel like that changes a lot. I mean, in some ways it does, in some ways it doesn't, but
I think it definitely can change things a lot.
I know I have the authority to make this decision, and I'm not really. Thank you, Mom, for your support. Thank you to my friend who's helping me get ready, but this is like something that I'm doing and I'm responsible for to even get to that point of doing that when you're in a partnership. I haven't done it.
Yeah. That's what I want to figure out, how to be alone together,
Let's be alone together.
but like retaining that autonomy, that like magical autonomy,
Yeah.
like that like sense of like I do what I want, but like also like with the love and care that is so fulfilling when you're in a partnership with somebody.
And can be really empowering and awesome.
Yeah. So whatever that balance is, I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah. Stay tuned, everybody. What is your experience of Maine? I'm curious, because you've been here enough times to like have some in different ways.
Yeah, when you were talking about like if you go deep enough into the wild, like something's gonna change. I was thinking when we went to Acadia, and we were on, is it Cooper's Rock?
I think we went to Otter Cliff.
Otter Cliff.
Yeah.
And then we also went down by the water where you were doing some rock climbing. I think at the time that was like the ruggedness of that was very impactful. And it's interesting coming as a visitor because you don't see everything that your people are struggling with when you're not there. Like when our friend and I came that one time, like you were having a pretty shit time. I had rented that Jeep.
Yeah.
So we took the top off the Jeep. We're driving around in like November. I think it reminds me a lot of the Upper Peninsula as far as like you're kind of driving around like I cannot believe there's not more tourists here or like more development because people have gone through so much work to preserve it. I really like that it just feels like very non-pretentious. Like there is a pretentiousness about the West Coast and whatever it exists. I'm sure people are the same way in certain parts of the East Coast, but I have not like experienced that from a shopkeeper, from a bartender, anyone in Maine.
Everyone's very like salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got all the beauty and like corny parts of, that people think about Maine too. Yeah. Like I think that's all a really fun combo.
I think people have a really good like sense of humor here.
And unfortunately I haven't met more Mainers, but yeah, I've met random people over the years who I find are from Maine, and I'm like, it makes so much sense now.
I'm curious what people think when I tell them that I'm from Maine. Like, what does that mean to them? Or does it mean anything? Because sometimes people are like, what's Maine? Where's Maine? And it's just like, damn.
Yeah.
I mean, basically Canada, but at the same time, like, it does have its own thing, And it's hard for me because I've been swimming in this soup pretty much my whole life, so it's hard for me to find myself distinct from it enough to describe what that is. Yeah. I'm not an object of my own knowledge in a weird way. Like, yeah. My eyes can't look at themselves, It's that type of thing of like, there's certain things I will never know about what it means to be a Mainer because
you are one.
Yeah. There's certain things that can only be perceived like from the outside, I guess. I mean, we got really good beer. Good beer, good mountains, good ocean, good lobster. I mean, yeah, like when you go to other places in the world and they're like serving Maine lobster and it's like this like, oh my God, like look how special this is. And like you go home and you can just like go down the street and get one if you want. Like it's kind of just like the concept of like luxury is like so crazy to me. And again, this kind of comes back to the like tourist economy kind of thing. Like people spend so much money to come here and to like go into the woods and have their camp and have their like wilderness experience. I know why now. I know why people do that because it's like it helps reset your nervous system, especially if you're like used to living in a city and like being dysregulated all the time. Like being in nature helps you to like reconnect with your human nature, like and your personhood as like a biological creature. Like it's great for that. I want to live here because of that. I don't want to just visit. Like I want that to be my life. I don't want to live where I have to take a vacation in order to feel regulated, like I want my life to be structured in such a way where like I can feel good all the time. Yeah, there's some sacrifice that comes with that. Like the winters are bleak. That's the trade-off. But they don't have to be, you know, if you've got good people around you and you can get a good fire going somewhere and get some skis out or whatever. Like, there's ways that people have been dealing with that for forever, you know?
It's hard to describe how this specific ground that we're standing on is somehow different from this next state over. You know what I mean? As far as like, oh, it's so radically different.
I mean, borders aren't real.
That part.
Everything's made up and the points don't matter.
That's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, so when we think about home and borders and whatever, like, they're real as long as we make them real in our head. With this place we call Maine, that's a very, I mean, recent thing, you know, in the last couple 100 years. Like, this place had a different name, and it has had a different name for a long time.
Do you know what it is?
Same with New England in general. It's like a lot of the names of towns. Yes, it's New England, so there's a lot of English-based names, but a lot of the rivers and like natural features are derivative from, you know, Penobscot language or whatever indigenous language that was kind of more used in that particular area. I think a lot of Mainers are typically pretty happy to share what's going on here because like we all appreciate it, and we hope that other people appreciate it too.
Is there anything else coming to your mind?
No, I just appreciate taking the time to flap my gums a little bit.
Flap your gums?
Flapping my freaking gums.
I haven't heard that. Thanks for the lobster.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.